Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Nezha changes which were added into Warframe about a week ago at this point. First and foremost, I feel like if you didn't like Nezha before these changes, you're not going to like him after. This by no means is a complete rework or overhaul of how the frame works. It's more of just a touch-up or a revisit to how the frame kind of performs in the current meta of Warframe. You're going to notice that he feels a lot more fluid than he used to if you're a player coming back to Nezha from when he was first released. But if you're a newer player, like picking up Nezha for the first time, then you're going to notice that now he is a very fluid frame to play, and you're going to have no difficulties making him like one of your go-to frames, I would say, because I can definitely see him being one of my go-to frames now that these changes have been implemented. So yeah, it's important to always keep an open mind whenever it comes to these types of changes, because there was a tiny little bit of controversy in regards to the change made to the third ability, which I don't think is that big of a deal because of the other changes that they made, but we'll talk about that whenever we get to it. So let's dive right into some of the changes. So I'm also going to be showing my build near the end of the video whenever we talk about all the changes and stuff like that, but yeah, let's just get right into it. So they increased the max rank health from 225 to 375. So like I said, this was done to complement a change made to the third ability. So you'll notice with a lot of these changes, they all kind of synergize well with one another, and that's a theme that they've kind of tried to follow throughout a lot of new Warframes designs. Like abilities complement other abilities, and stats complement abilities, and vice versa. So that's very important to keep in mind as well. They decreased the max rank shields from 225 to 150, which in my opinion isn't that big of a deal, simply because I never mod for shields anyway. Like, slash procs, toxin procs go straight for your shields anyway, and then your armor does not scale with your shields, only with your health. So 100% of the time I'm modding for vitality over redirection, so this is not a big deal to me, and I feel like it shouldn't be a big deal to anybody, but again, that is just my opinion. Moving on to the Firewalker changes, they changed from a channeling ability to a duration-based ability. This is done so you can use your other abilities a lot more freely, which in my opinion is a good change. And they also changed up the casting animation, so it's a small hop, which doesn't restrict your movement, because prior to this, it was something that would hold you in place, which was pretty clunky and didn't really fit the whole fluid movement of Warframe, I guess. So them making it so you can just cast it on the fly puts this guy more in competition with Vault than ever, because Vault is just like, hey, let's go ahead and hit my speed ability, and then I am instantly like 2 times faster. Now with Nezha, you're going to get a 25% speed increase, which is really, really good. So moving on to Blazing Chakram. Cast animation has been sped up, so it no longer restricts movement as well. So again, making it a lot more fluid, so you can use it on the fly, which is awesome. And then enemies hit by the disc are marked for a moddable duration, greatly increasing the damage that they take from all sources. Marked enemies have a chance to drop energy orbs, which is really, really cool. Adds a little bit more synergy, lets you recast your 1, lets you recast your 2, your 3, and your 4, which is really, really cool. Killing enemies while they are marked will now produce healing orbs instead of the current healing pulse, which in my opinion is a good change. I never ever used Nezha's 2 for the healing pulse that he had prior to the new health orbs being added to his 2, which in my opinion is a pretty good change, because now it's more noticeable, because the thing's just lying on the floor and anyone in your squad can pick it up, which is good. We've increased the number of targets the disc will try to hit before recalling, and improved some cases of faulty lock-on targeting, meaning that the disc is just going to hit more enemies, which is good, and it's going to, hit the enemies that you're meaning to throw it at instead of completely whiffing, and then you basically just wasting your energy. Added a charge throw, causing the chakram to fly straight forwards and backwards, dealing extra damage to enemies in its path, which is good, but not something that I use that much, but I can still use it to kind of teleport, because remember, this does have a teleport mechanic. And then we have teleporting will no longer cancel Firewalker, which is huge, because that makes it so you don't have to recast it, which was a big problem prior to these touch-ups. Moving on to Warding Halo, which is Nezha's third ability. It now has a little heads-up display thing that shows how much damage absorption is left instead of a simple numeric percentage, which in my opinion is very, very good, adding more visual changes for, multiple reasons is a good thing because people, it's more bright, it stands out, it's just gonna like, I guess, what's the word that I'm looking for here? I don't know. It's gonna like connect with people more that, hey, this is how much I have left on this ability until I have to recast it again. So yeah. Warding Halo now only blocks 90% of the damage. Now, this is where the controversy kind of picks up because people use Nezha over Volt because he was a frame that was completely immune to damage if you cast your free. So it worked kind of like Rhino's Iron Skin, but now it kind of works more like Gara's Splinter Storm in the sense that it gives you 90% damage reduction over complete immunity. And people were like, well, Nezha is naturally a squishy frame. I like using him because I can just run through higher level missions at high speeds, kill a lot of guys, get the thing done as fast as possible, which, I mean, is a fair argument. But the thing is, like, 90% damage reduction is still pretty good whenever you're doing, like, sortie level content, like the last tier of sortie. It's still going to protect you, and I'll demonstrate that in-game whenever we do get there. I'll spawn in level 155 heavy gunners, they'll all shoot at me, and you'll see that I'll take barely any damage. So, that's a thing, but it just kind of encourages more active play. Like, you have to be paying attention to how much damage absorption you have on your Halo and your energy, yada yada yada. So you have to use your 2 so you can get your energy back, and constantly keeping your 1 up because you can recast your 1 as well to be that speedy boy and not take as much damage, which in my opinion is cool. So moving on, we have damage absorption and vulnerability phase now begins as soon as you cast the ability. Cast animation is also sped up. So whenever you cast it, you're going to have a short period of time where you're able to absorb damage, and then the damage that you absorb is then going to be multiplied into like an extended sort of duration, I guess you could say, for the ability, right? So you're going to be able to absorb more damage before your ability goes down, which is very, very cool. With my build, you get a 5 times multiplier for that little invulnerability stage, and again, I'll demonstrate and show you guys that in-game. So moving on, increased incoming damage multiplier during invulnerability, which is the thing that we're just after talking about. Damage absorption multiplier now scales with power strength. When the health of Warding Halo runs out, it will do a AoE heat status effect and give you a short period of invulnerability, which is really cool because it lets you recover from whenever your Halo goes down. So you can just, get your energy back, get your health back, cast your Halo again, and do whatever you need to do to resume playing Nezha to the best of his ability, I guess you could say. And then we have Divine Spears, so it's sped up casting animation and slamming animations while removing the mandatory slam at the end of Spear's duration. You can still manually cast that or cause the slam to happen. And then we have hitting a speared enemy with Blazing Chakram produces a second Chakram, which fires at nearby enemies, which is adding a little tiny bit of synergy in there. And then they're just talking about like, hey, Signs have been remastered, which is pretty cool and all that stuff. So all in all, I think these are very good changes. It, promotes a more active playstyle for Nezha and makes him flow a little bit better, which again, I'll demonstrate in game. I know the screen's black right now, but this is my Nezha, and this is my Nezha build. Now, I completely neglect Nezha's 2 and his 4 because I don't really deem them as omega useful abilities because I have other sources of regenerating my energy, regenerating my health, such as energy pads and health pads, and I feel like his CC is still a little bit weak. I feel like it doesn't really work that well with his kit. I feel like his CC should be reworked so it works a little bit more like Equinox's meme, where he can cast it, it's a drain over time ability, and then it's going to spear enemies that he was close to and that are in his range. Even if the range of the ability was greatly reduced and it only affected like melee attackers and stuff like that, I feel like that would be totally fine instead of having this stationary where you cast it sort of ability. But again, that's just like my opinion. That's something that I've wanted to see on Nezha for a long time, and I was kind of disappointed whenever Nezha was released and it didn't work that way, but I can understand why, because he would pretty much be like the go-to speedy frame because he's tanky, he has got a lot of CC, and of course he's super speedy. So yeah, let's just go ahead and explain this build. So I have my power strength on here to increase the multiplier of my warding halo and then make all my other abilities deal a little bit more damage, even though to me that doesn't matter that much. It's more modding for the halo. So we have Augur Secrets, Transient Fortitude, and Umbral Intensify on here for the power strength. And then for our duration, for the likes of Firewalker and anything else that's affected by duration, we have Prime Continuity, Augur Message, Narrow Minded. Then I have Umbral Vitality for our survivability, Streamline for our casting, but you can go ahead and change Streamline out for pretty much anything you like. Like if you want a little bit extra range, you can go ahead and throw on Stretch, even though I don't really recommend that because you're already neglecting Stretch by a lot by using Narrow-Minded, but you can completely neglect Streamline and then go ahead and throw on Stretch if you really like, or pretty much anything else. Now, you'll notice on this build, I don't use Prime Flow. In previous Nezha builds, I would have used that because of Firewalker, but because they've changed Firewalker to a duration-based ability, I no longer need to use that because all of Nezha's abilities have a pretty long duration if you're using them right. So I don't see the need for having a very large energy pool. And then for my Exilus and Aura, I have Sprint Boost and Rush because I'm going to use this guy as my super speedy frame for high-end content, for higher level content, shorty level stuff, because he's tanky and he's speedy. And on top of that, if I have a Vault in my squad who's given me that speed buff already, then I'm going to be the fastest frame in the squad regardless, because I have a high base sprint speed, I've got the sprint boost, I've got the 25% on my Firewalker ability, so I'm going to be super, super fast. You can also replace your Arcanes for the likes of Arcane Consequence if you want to have a lot of like bullet jump momentum as well. That's really cool, and then you can basically just speed free missions, right? So with all that being said, let's take a look at the ability stats. So on Firewalker, mainly what I'm looking for here is the duration. That's a stat that I'm focusing on. Not focusing too much on the speed increase because you can't actually like increase that at all. So it just stays as a blue number right here. And all these damage stats just mean absolutely nothing to me because I don't see Nezha as a damage dealing frame, although they are nice to have on there. Blazing Chakram, not really looking for anything on there, but you see that you have the duration of 37.58 seconds. That's for the damage buff that you deal or you apply when you use this ability. And then you have the damage vulnerability, which I'm pretty sure is the damage buff that you get, which is pretty nice. You got the damage, so how much the chakram actually deals whenever it hits. And then you have the boosted damage, which is 2,340, so that's whenever you charge it up and then let it go. And then you have the health orb drop and the energy orb drop, so that's basically the chance to drop whenever you kill one of the guys, whenever they have the debuff put on them, right? So then we have Warding Halo, so the damage absorption. So that number right there is going to be how much damage you can absorb without taking any damage whenever you cast Halo. You have the radius, which is, I don't actually know what that is. I think that's the range for the AoE burst whenever you, lose all of your damage absorption. You have the damage per second, which if you stand up beside an enemy, that's how much damage it's going to deal per second. And then you have your absorption multiplier, which is the amount that it's times by, or the damage times by that number, which is going to turn into the total amount of damage that you can absorb, if that makes any sense. And then moving on to Divine Spears, we have the radius, which in my opinion, again, I completely neglect because I don't think it's a strong CC ability, although it can be good in like panic button situations. And then we also have the duration for it, which is 30 seconds. And then we have the damage of 1.4k for the Impale and the Slam attack. So if we're running around with Nezha, what I would basically be doing is I'd be casting my free and then my one, and you'll see that my one lasts for 75 seconds and we're super speedy, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and give myself a little bit more energy there. What I can do if I wanted to kind of be a little bit faster, get to like an out of reach area, is I could throw my chakram, reactivate it, and then teleport to it. And then if I'm in like a scenario where a melee enemy is going to melee me, I can go ahead and hit my Divine Spears. And then that guy is basically immobile for 30 seconds. Then I can recast that to slam them down in the ground and deal a further 1.4k damage, which is pretty nice, right? So testing Nezha out versus actual enemies like level 155s. I was just going to swap over to Mirage there to get rid of all of the ability effects that I had active. But testing this guy out versus the level 155s, I'm going to spawn in 5 Corrupted Heavy Gunners at level 155, like I said. And then we're going to go in, cast our third ability, throw our chakram at them to apply the debuff, kill them, maybe hit our 4 and stuff like that, and just kind of show you how it works, right? So what I'm going to be doing is first getting my energy, jumping towards these guys, hitting my free now as they're damaging me, and you'll see that I take a lot of damage, and then we get 13.4k damage to absorb on our third ability. If I wanted to, I can hit my first ability to be sped up, but what I want to be doing here is running into the middle of them to kind of immobilize them, and then throwing my chakram at them, and then that's going to bounce between the enemies and add a debuff. Now, the reason that it's important to have them speared before you throw your chakram is because if you hit an enemy that's speared, it's going to create another chakram, and it's going to keep on bouncing between nearby enemies and applying that debuff. And you're able to see the debuff by looking at the enemies who have like this little flame that you can see kind of floating above the ones that are speared, right? So those are the enemies that have the debuff to them, and if we just go ahead and shoot them, we deal a lot of damage. Now, granted, I'm using a very, very powerful build on my Corinth. It's a corrosive build with 100 munitions plus, you know, a pretty good ribbon that has damage, multi-shot, and puncture damage. So versus armored enemies, they're going to die very, very fast. But whenever I'm playing a fast frame, I'm using one of two things. I'm using a shotgun like the Corinth or the Arcaplasmor, or I'm using a polearm or whip with a maiming strike plus ribbon build or something like that, which might be going bye-byes with the introduction of Melee 3.0. We don't know yet, but that is basically how I play speedy frames, right? I'm trying to kill as many enemies as possible, and just to remind you guys, those guys were level 155, and we made short work of them. That was more on the part of the Corinth, but we didn't take that much damage because we were hiding behind cover, we had our halo up, we had enemies crowd controlled, and we didn't take that much damage. So if we were to go ahead and jump in the middle of the enemies, get our health back, and just take the damage, you know. So this is how long we're going to last. So let this halo run out. Go ahead, hit my free again. And then you'll see that these guys are lit on fire. We're taking all this damage. So you die pretty fast, but for level 155 enemies, like 5 heavy gunners just laying into you, you had a pretty good chance of surviving, you know, and I was just standing still right there. So if I was jumping about and doing my thing, enemies have like a lower chance to hit me if I am jumping around, right? That's kind of like a hidden mechanic, I guess you could say, in Warframe. The more you jump, the less likely you are to be hit. So that's a thing. But yeah, other than that, that is realistically it for Nezha. Again, I barely used the 4, I barely used the 2, but I can see scenarios where they would be useful, and I kind of demonstrated how I would use them. I use my 2 to get around, and I'll use my 4 as kind of a panic button if I'm about to be meleeed off a console or something, or before I go into a console to kind of like immobilize the enemy that's about to melee me. And I'm mainly focusing on the 3 and the 1, so I'm very fast and very tanky, so I can get through my Kuva floods or Kuva siphons or whatever it may be, capture missions, whatever, super efficiently and taking very little damage and just super fast. And again, if there's a vault in your squad, you're going to be the fastest frame there regardless. But there are so many other ways to build Nezha. You know, you can build for spears, you can, you know, make a completely different build for your Firewalker plus Halo compared to mine. You can use growing power. There's so much stuff that you can do. This is just personally how I like to build the frame because I'm using him as a fast boy, and I also like having the leeway to run cruiser projection if I wanted to take him into like a super long endgame mission for whatever reason. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So I'll give you guys a final look at the build, and yeah, new Nezha. Again, like if you weren't a fan of Nezha before, you're probably not going to be a fan of Nezha now because they've just changed up kind of the fluidity of the frame. So you can run and you can cast your 1. It's recastable, so it's more competitive with Vault. You can cast your 2 on the move as well. You can't cast your 3 or your 4. They still kind of immobilize you. And they've also give you a little bit more restorative abilities in form of the enemies dropping energy orbs and health orbs and stuff like that whenever you kill them after marking them with your second ability, which is a nice little perk on there, but it's nothing to write home about. But again, like I said, other than that, that's going to be it for this video. If you liked it, go ahead, hit that like button below. If you want to see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.